was recorded from the void in December 2020. It has been a hard year, but it does not matter. Nothing matters except get your Nihilist for Independence merchandise at teespring.com. Search Nihilist for Indie and buy yourself a t-shirt. Or don't. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters.
Adorable.
Former Vice President Joe Biden has been elected President of the United States. He is President-elect Joseph Robinette Biden at 77 years old.
Joe Biden is President-elect.
Man, what are your thoughts? Well, it's easier to be a parent this morning. It's easier to be a dad. It's easier to tell your kids character matters. It matters. Telling the truth matters. Being a good person matters. And it's easier for a whole lot of people. If you're Muslim in this country, you don't have to worry if the president doesn't want you here. If you're an immigrant, you don't have to worry if the president's going to be happier to have babies snatched away or send dreamers back for no reason. This is vindication for a lot of people who have really suffered. You know, the I can't breathe. You know, that wasn't just George Floyd. That was a lot of people that felt that they couldn't breathe. Every day you're waking up and you're getting these tweets and you just don't know, and you're going to the store and people who have been afraid to show their racism are getting nastier and nastier to you, and you're worried about your kids and you're worried about your sister. And can she just go to Walmart and get back into her car without somebody saying something to her? And you spent so much of your life energy just trying to hold it together. And this is a big deal for us just to be able to get some peace and have a chance for a reset. And the character of the country matters. And being a good man matters. I just want my sons to look at this. Look at this. You know, it's easy to do it the cheap way and get away with stuff, but it comes back around. It comes back around. And this is a good day for this country. I'm sorry for the people who lost. For them, it's not a good day. But for a whole lot of people, it's a good day.
Blue sky. I already knew what happened. I had to run here and celebrate with everyone, man. It's. I have no words. It's over! Hey, what's your reaction? Best day of my life. Best day of the year. Best way to conclude 2020.
Never saw the sun shining so bright. Never saw the
We did it, Joe. You're gonna be the next president of the United States.
Did you see the drunk woman at the hearing?
Oh my god, yes, I did see the drunk woman at the hearing, and I thought when someone captioned it saying, "Look at this drunk woman next to Rudy Giuliani," that they were being sarcastic, but no, oh boy, I mean, she was out of it.
Yeah.
Why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom
Zero.
of this here.
Zero. There's zero.
So, my question then
is if the...
Guess how many... Wait, what about the turnout rate? 120%?
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question.
And it was the fact that Giuliani was actually trying to calm her down. It's like, when Giuliani is saying, you've gone a bit too far.
He's been the perfect host for the downfall of American fascism is Rudy Giuliani. I mean, that bit where he started to leak diarrhea pouring out of his head.
Was it hair dye or was it brain fluid?
It was like mascara.
There's this spray stuff that you can get that adds thickness and makes it look like thin hair is a bit thicker.
He's not really fooling anybody with that hairline, hairspray aside. I mean, there's not much going on up there. Even Donald Trump's hair has given up. He's now grey. So he's trying to do a Harvey Weinstein here, I think, when Harvey came to his trial on the wee Zimmer frame to try and get some sympathy. But I'm too old to go to jail. Shit's getting real when a narcissist like Trump is starting to give up on vanity. I mean, I'd love to know what he made of Rudy Giuliani's leaking hair.
Raging, apparently, because it's my understanding that he has a weak stomach for ugliness, which makes all of him bizarre to mentally entertain. You know, the way he's always calling women he doesn't like dogs and things like that. So yeah, apparently he was absolutely raging because apart from anything else, it was just so grotesque.
I mean, he must have hated doing those rallies because Trump supporters are not the most aesthetically pleasing bunch on the planet. And I don't want to be judgmental, but, take a look.
I do. I think you can't see them very well with the lights of the stage.
Should we also talk about the ongoing mystery of the shrinking furniture? Somebody in his administration has slowly been replacing chairs and desks
with dolls' furniture
for the last several weeks, so they get smaller and smaller. I mean, that was magic as well. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up.
There's been some beauties, hasn't there? I mean, Boris Johnson not congratulating Joe Biden in a very timely fashion, and it turns out it's because they need to hastily redo the fucking PowerPoint slide to say, congratulations, Joe Biden, and then they leave congratulations to Trump fuzzed out in the background. And I just found myself thinking, you could do this literally in sort of PowerPoint or Keynote. Black slide, text box, congratulations, Joe Biden, export to ping, post, right? Sum total of about 2.5 minutes. How did you manage to leave the remains of the old one on there? How did you fuck up even this?
The person that I think is the hero of the Trump election loss is the person that took the booking at Four Seasons Total Landscaping. Because people will say, it's the fuck up of the Trump campaign for ringing the wrong Four Seasons. No, it's the person that answered the phone and went, yeah, we'll take this booking. What is that, a press conference? Oh yeah, we do those all the time here at Total Landscaping.
It's not that they phoned the wrong Four Seasons. It's that they assumed they would be able to get the Four Seasons. Trump tweeted that they were doing it at the Four Seasons. Then they phoned the Four Seasons. The Four Seasons went, get to fuck. And so they then had to hastily find somewhere else called Four Seasons.
That's even better.
Which is even better to do it at, which is why Trump tweeted it's at the Four Seasons and then pulled that and then Four Seasons Total Landscaping. And the reports coming in of it's next to the pawn shop and across the road from the creme and just...
Do you think if COVID hadn't have happened, maybe more Republicans would have been out voting?
I think he'd have won a second term. I don't think it's simply that people stayed away from the polls because of COVID, because I think the evidence is the contrary. They've had the highest turnout they've ever had. People were really, really engaged. What I think is his handling of COVID has been so terrible that there are a whole load of people who, in what is a very, very radicalised political marketplace in America, there are lots of people who are so terrified about the idea of the left that they would have sucked it up and voted for him, who simply couldn't vote for another 4 years of him because of the response to COVID.
Did you ever think Trump was going to win on the night? I mean, we did a whole podcast speculating about, is he going to win, is he going to lose? So we know what our feelings were on the lead up to this. But on the night, did you feel that it was game over there and then early on?
No, because I knew full well that there was a huge amount of mail-in voting happening. And because Trump had been shooting his mouth off for months, that the voting on the day was going to favour him. That was their entire grand plan. Put people off from the mail-in voting, stop the states that are swing states from counting the mail-in voting in advance, so that there is the appearance on the night of what they're referring to as a red mirage.
There's a video online of Bernie Sanders basically predicting exactly what's happened. The mail-in votes would be a major factor. And there are certain states that have very slow votes anyway. It would look like Trump's winning at the start with the walk-in votes. And then later on, once the mail-in ones came in, which were more predominantly towards Biden, it would then look like he was taking over. So then Donald Trump's whole plan, which he'd been enacting over the last 6 months of saying, there's going to be all this fraud, that would then give him ammunition to say, look, I was winning at the start, so what happened? It must be some jiggery-pokery going on here.
My view is every vote must be counted. For reasons which I don't have the time to get into tonight, you're going to have a situation, I suspect, in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, other states, where they are going to be receiving huge amounts of mail-in ballots. And unlike states like Florida or Vermont, they're not being able, for bad reasons, to begin processing those ballots until, election day, or maybe when the polls close. That means you're going to have states dealing with perhaps millions of mail-in ballots. Here is my worry. What polls show and what studies have shown is that for whatever reason, Democrats are more likely to use mail-in ballots. Republicans are more likely to walk into polling booths on election day. It is likely that the first votes that will be counted will be those people who came in on election day, which will be Republican. And here is the fear, and I hope everybody hears that. It could well be, and I don't know what's going to happen, nobody does, but it could well be that at 10 o'clock on election night, Trump is winning in Michigan, he's winning in Pennsylvania, he's winning in Wisconsin, and he gets on the television, he says, "Thank you, Americans, for re-electing me. It's all over. Have a good day." But then the next day and the day following, all of those mail-in ballots start getting counted, and it turns out that Biden has won those states. At which point Trump says, "See, I told you the whole thing was fraudulent. I told you those mail-in ballots were crooked, and we're not going to leave office." So that is a worry that I and a lot of people have.
Bernie Sanders in that video, he basically just says exactly what's panned out. So it shouldn't really have been any surprise to anyone that this happened.
The thing that I was worried about was that red mirage happening, and I was really, really worried as to whether or not their press, their media, would be robust enough to resist the urge to call it. And I was very, very relieved. And I feel like they probably all had a little conflab with each other in advance of this to say, this isn't going to happen. And interestingly, the only desk that was still aggressively calling things was the Fox desk. And they were much more aggressive about calling things for Biden. But the guy that does the decision desk at Fox is not a Republican. He's just a total numbers spod. And he's reputed to really be the best. He's really, really good. And he was saying, no, he's got Arizona. He has got Arizona. Get over it. So my fear was not that he was going to actually win, but my fear was that he was going to get some legal challenge against those mail-in ballots. And so I thought that he was going to do exactly what he has done. What I didn't take into account when I was feeling absolutely paranoid was how badly they do it.
You'd mentioned to me before about the fracturing of the left and the right that is happening across the political spectrum at the moment. And a lot of it's to do with people not understanding their own political philosophies and fundamentally not understanding their own principles, because I thought it was fascinating looking at America and how they could mistake Joe Biden for being a socialist. which is probably the most ridiculous thing in this ridiculous election. And I thought it was such a bizarre thing where the Democrats wanted the left to believe that Joe Biden was this left-wing socialist kind of guy, and the left perceived him as a right-winger, but yet the right perceived him as the furthest left you could possibly be. And I just thought that was really interesting, that Trump's opponent was almost this undefined entity that neither his own side nor his opposition were actually identifying correctly as who he really was. I mean, okay, there's probably some centre-right people that probably got it, but to me, everyone else around that was totally wrong.
The most bizarre thing is Trump's accusations at Biden. He called him a puppet of Castro, Chavistas. On the one hand, he was saying he's like this far-left extremist socialist, and then the next day he would say he's bought and paid for by the big tech, the big elites, these powerful big donors and special interests. It's like, make your mind up, pal. You can't be both at the same time. You're either this extreme leftist or this extreme establishment figure. The fact is, he's neither of those.
That was really successful in nixing their vote in Florida with the Hispanic population, because that socialist tag, to them, it's Castro and it's Chavez and things. And the Democrats were really, really crap about answering that, because, of course, the fear of that socialist tag is actually dictatorship. That's what those people are really afraid of. And the failure to respond to that and say, well, here is somebody that's talking about not just 2 terms, but 3 terms, and saying he won't abide by the result of the election necessarily. Here's your actual dictator. They really ought to have turned that, and apparently they just kind of thought, well, all this stuff about the wall and the racism, they'll vote for us. And it was a complete failure to understand that actually a lot of Latinos, and particularly in Florida, are actually really right-wing because they've escaped from Cuba and they've lived through communism and they're having none of it. And that's what they're really afraid of. They are so obsessed with this idea of shrinking the government without any great understanding a lot of the time, it seems. I think they probably have the biggest bureaucracy in the world. And the Republicans, when they get in, never make it any smaller.
I mean, their military, for example, is bigger than the next 10 biggest militaries added together. To give you an idea of the size of the American government, it's just extraordinary. It's huge. And I can understand why people are like, we should make this smaller. But, you know, there's no incentive for either of those parties to do that. It's not going to happen. I think America will just continuously bloat and get bigger and bigger until one day it just explodes. And we might actually not be that far off.
I'm not convinced that Trump being taken out of the White House is going to be the end of any of this. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens under the Joe Biden presidency, if any of this will be corrected. Because one thing we did all predict in the previous episode was that if America continues down this line, even if it's in the Joe Biden version where things are happening a bit slower, it still leaves the door open for a Trump-like figure to reappear in the future.
The thing that really worries me is that somebody more competent than him comes in and uses the same playbook, because the great undoing of Trump has been the fact that he is lazy and ignorant. He's got foxy street smarts, hasn't he? You can't deny that. He's got a natural ability to just be a prick. But he is actually bone idle. I mean, unbelievably idle. And he's a little trust fund bastard who's just had stuff given to him all his life. He's never had to face consequences of anything. His entire life, there's been nothing that his dad's money or press releases or threats of lawsuits couldn't make go away, which is why he's having such difficulty now, because although I think he knows he didn't win, at the same time he can't actually acknowledge that that's true, and so he's in this fugue state of trying to believe these two realities. But had he been willing to actually understand the logistics of American politics, he could have been so much more dangerous. He didn't know anything at all. And so he's depended upon other people doing things for him. And a lot of the people around him have then not done the things he wanted. And that has been the saviour of America at this point. But if you get somebody that actually understands the mechanics of the American state properly, America's fucked.
I mean, I don't know if you watched any of the debates leading up to this, but I watched the one with Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. And I have to give the devil his due here that I thought the content of what he was articulating was awful, but how he articulated it was actually quite compelling. And it was very interesting to see her go on the attack against him and him say, well, yeah, I am this horrible bastard. That's who I am. And not deny it and embrace it and be quite confident and charismatic in doing it. And to come back to what you're saying here, Tucker, about what happens if you get somebody slightly more competent in there with similar worldviews. And that was a bit of a moment when I was watching that, thinking there's a very good chance even if Trump wins, to that point I didn't know that this is the direction we're headed, but even if Trump loses, this could be the new face of the Republican Party. And I think it'll be interesting to see if they're going to double down on the Trumpian ways or if they're going to stick the car in reverse and go straight back into more of a Bush era approach.
I think that the Trump fringe, that hardcore Trumpian element, are probably going to go off by themselves into a National Front MAGA thing, which might undermine the Republicans for some period of time.
In some ways I think we have to be quite thankful for QAnon, because they kept saying, the QAnon person, the Q, said, don't worry, there is a plan. And I think that to contrast what's happened campaign-wise for the last 4 years, I mean, since Trump's been elected, the left has busted a gut to do everything it possibly can to get him out of the White House. And I mean, I think we really have to particularly say that the African-American community could almost be credited entirely for saving democracy in America. I think really if it hadn't been for the Black Lives Matter movement, that there is still a possibility that Trump would have won. But I think that whole QAnon philosophy, though, of saying there's a plan, it doesn't really spur people into action. It sort of implies that don't you worry, just sitting your fat arts doing nothing, somebody else is taking care of it. Whereas I think the left understood that shit had hit the fan and they were out there being activists. And I do think that the left absolutely out-campaigned the right.
There's been the interesting addition of the Lincoln Project, who were right-wing activists and ad guys and strategists who, a lot of them called it on Trump very early and were like, I want fucking nothing to do with this at all, and decided to bring the weight of that shit that they've been doing against Democrats all this time against Trump. And it was magnificent. This is what the left has lacked, of been bringing a rolled up copy of the fucking New York Times to gunfights. And finally somebody turned up with a big fucking gun. And that was really helpful because they convinced an awful lot of those right-leaning swing voters of a certain age, military people, that sort of caste, that character mattered and that you couldn't be voting for this absolute fucking dick.
I suppose a lot of the things that I would probably criticise Biden for were some of the things that the right-wingers would like. He's kind of a law and order guy and he's like a pro-military person,
Yeah.
Those things I don't particularly like, but that's probably part of the success.
But we need to be practical.
Well, I don't.
But I feel we all need to be practical in terms of what we want from politicians. And personally, I'm a lot less enamoured of the idea of chaos than I was 20 years ago.
Free, to be fair, in a prior episode, you and I were discussing calling the Tories on a lot of the Dominic Cummings approach, which was this blatant bullshit, lying, deceiving, all these different tactics they were deploying at the time. And Trump was doing that as well. And I think that, to come back to what Tucker's saying here, that the Lincoln Project was very effective at calling out a lot of that shite. And I think what people are frustrated with is your Keir Starmer opposition, where we're not treating the illness, we're treating the symptoms, we're not going for the jugular when we should be. And I think that the Lincoln Project, they were very effective at going straight to the heart of the matter, saying what had to be said, and it was effective. And I think that really across the board, in the world. We could probably do with that more in politics, people going for the jugular in debates as opposed to acting like Boris Johnson is a normality or that Trump is a normal thing. Because even Keir Starmer, when he's opposing Boris Johnson, is still debating him like he is a normal politician. And I don't think that these people should be treated as such. They should be treated as an exception because they are.
It's a huge problem to me. And I mean, it seemed to me that it took about 3 years for most media commentators in America to get used to the fact that it was okay to say that Trump was telling lies. It took a long time for them to actually just say untruth, not true, lie, to use very, very simple words for it. But I think by the time of the election, a big chunk of the media, including weirdly and amazingly Fox News, had reached the point where it couldn't go on. I mean, that's COVID as well, because apparently Murdoch is absolutely horrified by the COVID response because he sees the danger to American society and to his own money. And he's had enough. But now you've got this new network, OAN. Jesus.
It's going to be TNN soon. I would bet money that that's going to become the Trump News Network shortly, but we'll see where that goes. Just two things on that. I mean, the first is I felt on the night, I know, Tucker, you went to bed because you knew this is going to be a few days. I don't have to wreck my sleep pattern for this. But I stayed up, and one thing, channel hopping on the internet, I felt the most powerful moment of the whole night. It wasn't really a moment. It was the fact that every news organisation just turned on him at once. As soon as they knew, that's it, it's Biden. Every organisation that had been pussyfooting around and not saying what had to be said finally went, you know what, fuck it, he's not the president. So now we can actually say this guy is a lying piece of shit, and that was the beginning of people cutting away from him in news conferences.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, the BBC did not do that, but in America they did, including Fox. These channels actually just cut away and went, we're not going to let you hear the rest of this because it's all shite. And I thought that was such a sea change from where we had been.
I think they can get the smallest ever round of applause for that.
Yeah.
For having finally, at the very last moment, decided, oh, actually, this is too much. Now that they know he's actually lost.
Yeah, let me be clear, that wasn't a morally heroic thing.
It was infuriating me that, there was this discrepancy between the electoral votes count for a couple of days where Fox had clearly called Arizona. Other places weren't calling Arizona. So depending on who you believed, it was either 254 or 261 or whatever the fuck it was, And it was while they were waiting for the Four Seasons press conference to start off that CNN called Pennsylvania. And this was so beautiful that it got called while he was on stage. And I did feel like, I know that there was another vote count that came in from Pennsylvania that meant the vote had gone beyond the margin for a recount, which is why they called it. But it had clearly been looking like that was what was going to happen for days. And I felt that in any other election, they'd have called Pennsylvania about 2 days ago. But I don't know, there was obviously some sense that Rudy Giuliani was about to do something batshit. And that they needed to fucking grab their testicles and just fucking say it, calling it for Biden. And it was just beautiful. And the bottle of fizz that I'd had in the fridge all week, finally, I was fucking cunted within about an hour and a half. I really was.
I remember my girlfriend she was working that day and sort of missed that moment. And it was probably maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, UK time, I want to say, when that flashed up, because I'd had the TV on the whole time watching this since the election, the process really began, and when that flashed up for Pennsylvania was the moment where the whole internet just burst into cheers. That was the celebration point. People were rightly comparing it to the ending of Return of the Jedi, when it's just like, yes, we fucking did it, it's over. But to come back to more of the serious point, I think that where we go next with Trump news or wherever we're headed, I think one of the factors with Rupert Murdoch cutting ties with him, I think COVID's been a major factor because, as you articulated there, Tucker, it's going to affect his bank balance if someone isn't dealing with it. I think, though, that objectively, worldwide, and certainly in America, we definitely had hit Trump fatigue. So just to even remove all the politics from it, I haven't remembered any president that I've wanted to see the back of more not just because he was a fascist arsehole, but because I was so, and I still am, so bored of him. I mean, after 8 years of Obama, or even 8 years of W. Bush, I never remember feeling so thank fucking God he's out. I mean, for 4 years, it's every day he was tweeting, every day there was something, and it just wore everybody out, unless you were a complete cultist about Trump. Even if you were a Republican or a right-winger, or possibly even in sync with his politics, you would still be like, Jesus Christ, just go away.
Shut up,
just
mate. Yeah.
go away. As a kind of TV personality for like The Apprentice, a once a week, let's see what this clown's up to. That's what Trump fits very well into that. But every day of the week, doing something absurd just became too much. It went past the point of being funny, sick, twisted, to just, I don't fucking care anymore, just go away.
I'm at that point where the sound of his voice makes bits of my brain happy slap each other. I found it so difficult to actually listen to the presidential debates. I just watched bits of them because I could not listen to an hour and a half of Donald Trump's voice.
I could understand from Rupert Murdoch's point of view in 2016 or even prior, and not just him, but many news network heads and people on TV and film thinking this guy is money because he is such an absurd creature. It's perfectly understandable why somebody would think that's going to generate cash because he is such a freaky weirdo. But It is that fatigue factor. A weirdo like that can be rolled out once in a while and you can point and go, look at this tit. But you can't be having that guy on Twitter dozens of times a day, often just yelling and screaming and being crazy. Like, that is just too much. So I think not only as his politics, I think, are hopefully done, but I think that his character, I can't see there being a massive appetite now in the mainstream, certainly, for him to be a TV personality of any kind, if Trump News or whatever is the next step.
He'll have his network and people will pay their $10 a month if they're interested in more of that to listen to that. And I imagine it will shrink and shrink and shrink. What we need to be careful of is what remains of the Republican Party, because now you've got QAnon nut jobs in Congress. The thing that worries me is what he's doing as he goes out the door. So America is in such a bad way with COVID at the moment, and they just had their Thanksgiving pretend early Christmas thing that they weirdly do every year. Their hospitals are already at capacity. The surge that they're having now is much, much worse than in the spring because, of course, it's combined with all the normal seasonal flu, and this is the kind of time of year when these viruses are more prevalent and we are more susceptible to them. Not only that, but he's also weirdly sacking loads of high-level people in the NSA and the Pentagon and putting in the kind of people that normally just contribute to Reddit posts. And it's of concern. The NSA is refusing to brief the Biden transition team at the moment because they've put some guy that sleeps with his head wrapped in tinfoil in charge of the NSA. I mean, all these guys are getting their jars on the 20th of January, but there's still quite a few weeks until then.
I think that we should probably park the Trump News Network until our next episode where we're going to look at grifter culture. But I think it definitely is worth speculating about where we go next. You've touched on earlier, Tucker, about where the Republican Party may be headed. Is it worth also speculating about the Democrats? How do you think that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, how's that going to play out over the next few years? How are the Republicans going to counteract that? Where are we going to be in 4 years? Dare you speculate about the 2024 election? I've kind of hit the point in politics, to be quite frank, that I now am unable to predict the future. I've just thrown my hands up and said that I can't even fucking see 2 weeks in front of us now.
Yeah.
Years ago, I used to pride myself going, yeah, I can fucking see how things are going to go. Not anymore. But if you guys want to have a crack at this now, you're more than welcome to.
My prediction would be that I don't think Biden will actually run for a second term because he is an old guy, and I don't think he would have gone for it this time had it not been for Donald Trump. I think he sensed that he was that kind of middle of the road guy that could get Republicans to vote for him, and that he felt it as a moral obligation to try and get Trump out. And he's done that. But I don't think he'll necessarily go for a second term, which does leave it open for Kamala Harris. That's the only thing I'm sure of.
As far as the Democrats are concerned, it will be interesting to see how it pans out with their sort of left-wing faction. You've got your like AOC and a few others. What are they called? They've got a gang. They
the
all
squad.
pull together. Yeah, the squad. I think it's kind of lame, that, but...
To me, they're just like the Corbynistas. I mean, they're great. I really, really like AOC, but a lot of what she says is shite.
I think the Twitter fandom is probably overestimating their popularity.
Yes.
Generally, and even within the Democrat Party.
The problem with idealism is that it's not realistic. And that...
I think that's the nail on the head, and I think that if I was to predict the future of AOC, I do hope for the best, but as ever prepare for the worst. And I think it's Obama again, where the hype train is going to be too big and it's going to be too powerful, and then eventually when her day in the sun comes, she's not going to be able to live up to the hype. And I think that as a young person particularly, because they're all very young, and I think that with experience, I hope that they maybe take on a bit more of a Sturgeon dynamic, where it's not promising sunshine and rainbows and the Great Revolution. It's just being good at your job and being effective. And I'm hoping that comes into style. I think this whole lusting for the great change, it's like, yeah, okay, we will get there. But rather than waiting for one big moment, would it not make logical sense to put lots of little moments in place to gradually facilitate this change? And that's the thing with AOC, where I feel that even if she is good, Obama was good, but the expectation was so high that it was impossible for him to live up to that. And I think that she and the rest of the squad are going to find that going forward, that the way America is set up, it's not designed to be changed overnight. By design, it's meant to have these barriers in place.
Well, it's not designed to change ever, really, is it?
As I hit my middle age now, I do find myself realising that often the people who are organised are not necessarily the people that you like. And I am bored of the fist to the head fucking revolutionary crowd who are too busy working out whether or not we've had a full demographic audit to make sure that everybody's represented to actually ever get anything done. And so I'm perfectly happy with some middle of the road, competent, boring people. I would so like to be bored.
The only problem with boring people is sometimes they can get away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Your more interesting, flamboyant people wouldn't have done. They can get stuff under the radar, and especially when it comes to like war and things like that. You'll find that like your boring Tony Blair type gets away with more than these other guys might have done. That's the danger with that kind of thing.
Okay, I will concede that, but you know what? Right now, it's a risk I'm willing to take. I mean, the thing is, with Trump, he'd have gotten away with so much more if he'd have been able at any point to resist continually telegraphing absolutely every fucking awful thing that he was planning to do, going to do, and currently doing. I'll tell you this, something that I'm not convinced about is actually that there hasn't been some election interference by the Republicans. I find myself thinking that the reason the route that they keep taking is, oh, this election was fraudulent, is because they know how much they cheated by and can't believe the Democrats still won.
There's all this fraud, but only in the states that we lost.
Yeah, and not in the Senate races.
One thing that annoys me about Trump is a lot of things that he claims about himself. They're obviously very grandiose claims about how amazing and brilliant he is, and he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But there is actually some truth in a few of his claims. Not that he's actually been successful through anything he's done intentionally, but by accident, some of the stuff is actually not that bad. So, for example, he's been quite a drone bomber, the same as every previous president. He's dropped a lot of bombs all over the world. He's just, escalated the war in, Somalia and Yemen and places like that. And the American military is still on the march. But at least he's paid lip service to bringing troops home, which is not the case for pretty much any, your other politicians that could have been president. So that's something in his favour.
It has been at the expense of, for instance, the Kurds, though.
Yeah. So he's not consistent in any way, but when he says, "Oh, I'm better in this," you're kind of like, you can't 100% disagree. Same with the economy. It's not been a massive success through anything he's done, but there has been some improvements in some areas just through like sheer hard work of people in private industry just getting on with stuff. Some of the stuff he's done has been very ham-fisted and caused more problems. All the trade war and stuff with China and stuff like that. So some industries have been harmed terribly by that, but by accident.
He just doesn't actually seem to understand that tariffs are paid by the inhabitants of America, not by the Chinese.
Exactly. He makes this grand claim of being the best president for African Americans ever. Wasn't there this whole slavery thing which got abolished? If you've kind of forgotten about that, if you've forgotten about the whole civil rights movement and all that, but it does have some of a point. I'll try to play devil's advocate here. It does have something of a point where there has been some improvements in terms of incarceration. Has made these pardons and things like that, which is probably mostly down to Kim Kardashian. Can you believe? It's amazing that it took another TV star to convince the TV star president to actually do something decent. And of course he'll claim credit for that, and he'll say, well, look, you had a black president there, and I've done more than he does. And the horrible, painful truth is he's not completely incorrect when he says that. And that's the shameful thing, I think, for other parties and other politicians, is to look at this guy who most people will say has been the worst president ever in the history of the planet, and yet some of the stuff he's done is still better than you would have done. That is the horrific thing about this guy, is the stuff he's done that has turned out well really makes a shame on all these other guys. And it will be interesting to see if Biden is able to do anything good that he can really claim to have really done intentionally well instead of by accident.
There are things with regards to, like the family separations that are going to be a stain on America for a long, long time. And just the other day, because of a lawsuit by the ACLU, the American whatever
Civil Liberties Union.
Civil Liberties, thank you. I just had a complete senior moment there. The Trump administration gave them more data on the children because they've still got hundreds of kids basically in care in America that were separated from migrants coming across the border. And it turns out that these children where they said they thought they had no information on who they were or where they came from, actually they've got, names and addresses and phone numbers for the parents, and they've just been sitting on it. And apparently it only came out because Trump ran his mouth at the presidential debate and said, well, yeah, maybe we could do some more. And so the ACLU sued, saying, well, he's saying that they've got more data, and it turned out they did. And yeah, they've been keeping these babies, children, toddlers, away from their parents for months and years, and they had phone numbers for the parents. Interestingly, there was a guy that had been in the White House called Miles Taylor, who's the person, it turns out, who wrote the Anonymous book. The person that's saying we're moving stuff off his desk and we're trying to keep the worst at bay. I've heard him interviewed, and the way he told it was very funny, although horrifying. He was trying to do border security stuff, and Trump's phoning him up, asking him, can we have a moat with crocodiles in it? And he's like, no, we
sharks
can't.
with laser beams on their heads.
He wanted sharks and alligators or something in a fucking moat running along the wall. You've got an actual job to do, and you've got to spend 2 days trying to cost a moat with alligators in. Okay.
Imagine getting that request for quotation in the subject line of an email. RFQ, moat, alligators. Like, the fuck is this guy?
This is the thing he said, and they only finally dissuaded him of it by telling him it had cost billions and billions of pounds, because he's really, really cheap and he resents spending the money. So, we really, really wanted the wall to tear people's flesh and for there to be alligators and sharks. And he says that the first ever meeting he was in the Oval Office, he's sitting there taking notes. And Trump said, "Are you fucking taking notes?" I was like, "Put your book away." I remember at the time being very concerned by the way Tony Blair used to, what they called it, sofa government or something, where they were all kind of meeting and not keeping notes. This has been the same sort of thing. They've been taking recordings of his speaking with foreign leaders and putting them on classified filing systems so that they're away from being listened to. So that thing that went on with Ukraine, with him asking for favours, God only knows what the mad bastard has been saying to other politicians worldwide.
I keep thinking that this period of time, it's a bit like the Second World War. It's not a war, but in the sense that my generation, I think, forward look at the history of World War II, I think, quite differently to the boomer generation that weren't there but studied it in school and were given the textbook version of here's how it went down. And just like you said there, Tucker, this guy's an evil, evil bastard. Fuck this guy. Just like Hitler or the Nazis, these are terrible people. But I think what's important not to lose sight of is what Free's touching on, which is in the same way the Nazis were terrible, but you couldn't really hold up Britain and go, man, we were great. Or America, you couldn't do that at the same time. So the thing around the evil stuff needs to be looked at and dealt with as well. And I think that the danger of not learning the lessons of what's happened here is that we could hyper-focus on look at how much of a shitebag Trump was and not see the steps, as we went through in the previous episode, talking about how we get there and how do we stop that from happening again. So I don't know if I've got any final thoughts on Trump because I don't know if we're done with them yet. But at the moment, I don't think I'm in a position now to really objectively say what the fuck has even happened.
As it stands, I am now confident that Biden will be inaugurated. I don't think Trump will go to the inauguration. I think he'll be pissing and moaning forever, pretending that he won and that it was robbed from him and that he was stabbed in the back. But the response of America has been so much better than I dared to hope for. So I'm now becoming confident that there is no way for him to keep hold of the power. But what I am worried about is that probably a third of the population of America thinks he won. And that is really, really worrying. And I don't know how Biden governs that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys follow many people in America, like friends or relatives or whatever, but I've got a whole bunch of contacts over there. And man, looking through their feed, their Facebook, is absolutely frightening. You know, people who I've met, who I've liked, and I've had dinner with and stuff like that, who I get on with, but never talked about politics. And then I'm looking through these feeds, and it's just conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory, just permanent drivel, absolute drivel, kind of stuff like you look at, and within 30 seconds, if you did a couple of Google searches, you would find out the facts about that thing. But people just don't care. People are too stupid. Some of my family have come to blows online over it. A few folk have fractured their relationships over it, just through having a go at each other because they see rubbish and they're like, "You're talking crap, this is garbage." And then
there is, this is true. I mean, there's a whole, sorry to interrupt, but there's a whole thing, I think it's like QAnon divorces. People that are so into this cult that, as you say, they're coming to blows online with their family, and I mean, they are losing their family, they're losing their wives, their children, over this madcap conspiracy stuff. So yeah, I mean, it really is pretty twisted.
It's absolutely wild to see so many people in a country just have these mad conspiracy theories, and it all seems like there's massive two things at the same time: the election stuff and the pandemic thing as well. It's crazy. It's crazy. And to see it with your own eyes, to see folk actually falling for this stuff, you can't really do anything about it. They're just in these rabbit holes. There's no way out. They've blocked all the folk who are telling them that they're wrong. In the olden days, it used to be folk could have these mad conspiracy tinfoil hat ideas about, Nixon or whatever, or JFK or the moon landings, there's some kind of mad thing, and you'd just be able to laugh it off. This is now mainstream. This is your average person in the street is so susceptible to this kind of stuff. And that's kind of scary.
Is that Trump's ultimate legacy? Is it going to be conspiracy theory thinking being thrown into the waters of politics. And not being true, but being viable as a political vehicle.
Well, I would say in a way that Trump is actually a symptom of that. He's actually the culmination of all the mistrust of the mainstream media and just the growth of social media into just about everyone's lives. You know, older people, particularly. I'm not pointing the finger at the boomers again, but...
I think there is a chance, though, the way we were sort of saying earlier, that America might actually just kind of expand itself to supernova point before it collapses back in. There is a chance that that element of American society might do that. There's a guy called David Frum, who was George Bush's speechwriter, who is a vocal Republican anti-Trumper. And his pinned tweet is, when all of this is over, nobody will remember having been in favour of it. Right? And I suspect that once Biden takes power, there are going to be so many scandals that are going to come out. What we've seen is literally just the tip. There's going to be so much stench that I find myself wondering if it won't be so much that that element shrinks away and denies itself. Plus, quite a lot of them are just going to die of the COVID because they won't fucking wear a mask and they keep hanging around together in big packed rooms. I mean, this could just be self-healing.
I think that's it. It's going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be the self-healing way, or it's fixing to get worse. It's fixing to get a lot worse.
Yeah.